We want to welcome you to our City Commission regular meeting. We ask that you turn off or silence all cell phones. Meetings are televised every day on Channel 2 at 7 p.m. and at midnight. At this time, we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance followed by silent meditation.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First item on the agenda, consideration of previous meeting minutes. If there's no questions or comments, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll go ahead and move that we approve the minutes from August 13th, 2019 regular meeting.
Second.
Motion has been seconded. Begin voting with Commissioner Preisinger.
Aye.
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 Motion carried 4-0. Next item on the agenda, second consideration ordinance 8108, Uniform Public Offense Code 2019.
Mr. Mayor and Commission, the next three items will be handled by our Police Chief, Pat Kitchens.
Mr. Mayor and Commission, the item is before you for second consideration. We spent some time in detail talking a couple of weeks ago about the changes from last year to this year. I want to highlight just a couple of them to make sure we're all recall that. This year, they added Article 7A, which is a new article in the municipal code, or in the Uniform Public Offense Code titled Crimes Against Public Trust. We talked about those and highlighted those. Number two is the change from last year to this year that addresses cannabis or CBD oil with THC in it. There are provisions within the ordinance, if the book was passed as presented, that would outline how one might do that. In addition, we asked you to no longer exempt us from the drug paraphernalia. We'd like to use the book's version of that, which is we've looked at and are familiar with and are comfortable with. So we would no longer exempt ourselves with that. And then we asked you to exempt us out of the dangerous dog section in this particular book and use the one in the municipal ordinance that we have that is much more comprehensive. Those are what I believe to be the highlights. Certainly we'll answer any questions that you might have from then until now. But if there are no questions, we recommend passage as presented.
Any questions or comments? If not, this requires a roll call. Begin with Commissioner Preisinger.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Vote passes 4-0. Next item on the agenda, second consideration ordinance 8109, Standard Traffic Ordinance 2019.
Again, Mr. Mayor and Commission, this is before you for second consideration. I will highlight the one change that we talked about. We would ask you to exempt ourselves from one of the sections of the ordinance that would prohibit a person from going into the street to solicit either businesses or donations, much like we talked about at the intersection of 4th Street and Limit. We would ask you not to approve that part, but unless there are questions regarding that, it's ready to pass.
No questions or comments. Begin with the roll call vote, starting with Commissioner Dedekin.
Aye.
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 Vote passes 4-0. Next item on the agenda, second consideration ordinance 8110, Intersection Traffic Control Devices 2019.
Mr. Mayor and Commission, this is the document that we use to enact intersection control throughout the community. There was one change from last year to this, and that was the subdivision out here at 20th and Eisenhower. We added one stop sign. Otherwise, it is ready for passage as presented.
No questions or comments. Begin roll call vote, starting with Commissioner Preisinger.
Aye.
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 Vote passes 4-0. Next item on the agenda, second consideration ordinance 8111, demolition assessments.
Our Deputy City Clerk, Carrie Collins, will handle the next two items.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Commissioner. Since our presentation of this policy report to you on August 13th, there have been no changes, and staff recommends roll call vote.
No questions or comments?
Well, this is the properties that several months ago came in front of the commission. I think they were for the properties that we had to make a decision on with respect to demolition. Is that correct?
No, these are the assessments, so these are properties that we've already just demolished, and then we're looking to assess those costs on the tax rolls. So we just heard this 2 weeks ago on first consideration. So this will just authorize the city to assess the cost of those demolition onto the property's annual taxes.
Those have to be at the county clerk's office by when?
We have to have them by the end of September, but we'll do, if you guys do that, if you approve it tonight, we'll take it by the end of this
So
week.
there are a couple more that we'll probably be looking at too, because I'm thinking of the one at, call it 802 South Broadway or something. Is that not on here?
No, we'd wait till next year. The ordinance would be limited to the property zone.
Oh, so there's no more that we'd add this year, even though we expended the money this year.
We'll put them on the tax rolls each year after they've been completed.
So are these properties from 2018 or are these from like 2019, the ones, there's 10 of them here?
Right, these are properties we've already taken down in the last demolition process, and we're just assessing those costs onto the tax bill.
So that last process was 2018, correct?
Right.
Yeah, okay.
But some of these houses were taken down recently.
Right, we gotta cut it off at some point.
Okay, so
And
that's what I'm asking. We're
Right.
cutting them
Yes,
off.
yes, sir.
So,
Yeah.
and these are the last that will be assessed this year.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right, understand. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Now, if there's no other questions, I'll begin the roll call, starting with Commissioner Dedekin.
Aye.
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 All right.
The vote passes 4-0. Next item on the agenda, second consideration, ordinance 8112, nuisance assessments.
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, this again, these are properties, and as on attachment A to your policy report, those are listed in alpha order by legal description. That helps the Register of Deeds in the recording process. The last page shows you the total cost of $91,946.37. That includes the MO fee and also the admin fee that's associated with that. When we presented this to you on August 13th, it was at $92,962.64. So we've had a few come in between August 13th and tonight to pay. So we're asking for you to, also this has to be to the commission, to the county. Same time we'll deliver the demos that we've done, and then they'll put it on the 2019 tax roll. So this, we recommend a roll call vote on this as well.
I just had a question, and
Sure.
I understand these assessments going on the county's tax rolls, but a lot of these end up not being paid. At that point, at some point, do they go into a court? Do they go to a court? Or how are they,
Generally what happens with a lot of these, they can be paid in one way. If there's a sale of the property and there are unpaid taxes and assessments, then those would require, any title insurance company would require that those be paid before they would insure title on a new owner. Otherwise, a lot of these end up, if these assessments aren't paid, then that means the taxes aren't being paid as well. And so they go into a tax foreclosure process, which can, take quite a while.
Right.
Of course, these liens are inferior to tax liens in some ways, so there's a risk of them getting wiped out in that process. But that is the process.
that's the process after these go on the rolls?
Yes, sir.
And they're not taken care of, or, okay, thank you. Understand?
Roll call. I begin, voting with Commissioner Parsinger.
Aye.
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 The vote passes 4-0. Next item on the agenda, citizen participation. Anyone from the audience would like to speak? If not? Yes. Please come to the podium. State your first and last name, your address, please.
I'm John Stegemeyer from 525 Cherokee in Leavenworth. We're still trying to get a sidewalk there when they tore out the parking lot, get a sidewalk so when people get out of their car, they don't have to get out in grass. I was promised once from one of you commissioners that I was approved, and somewhere along the line it got swept under the rug. And we met over in the parking lot here the other day. We didn't get anything solved because they wanted to pour just a 3-foot pad so a person could get out. And so I asked them, man, how about people in the back seat? And they didn't seem to think anybody come down in a car in the back seat, which I told them Tenpenny has a lot of functions of everything from weddings to all kinds of meetings and birthday parties. VFW does the same thing with weddings and You know what I mean? People, we hear this all the time from customers are complaining constantly, why don't we have a sidewalk? And we're here tonight, we got several people from the 500 block to see why. Anybody got an answer?
And you said that you were promised a sidewalk?
Can't hear you.
You said that you were promised a sidewalk? Somebody promised that there were gonna be a sidewalk
Yes,
from
he
the
did.
commission?
Mr. Griswold did, told me I was approved. Not only did he tell me I was approved, when Phil, the guy that had the contract for the parking, and when I was talking the day they was getting ready to lay the sod, and I said, who's gonna pour the concrete? He says, I'm laying sod, that's in my contract. I said, well, I was told by the city commissioner I was getting concrete sidewalk. I'm asking for yellow line to yellow line, where you park. And he said, well, I'll have to contact the city. So the city employee comes down, he said, yes, John's been approved of concrete from yellow line to yellow line. And at first, they weren't going to put the sod down in that area, but Phil, we didn't know exactly when we was gonna get the concrete. So Phil said, well, his contract called for sod, he'd go ahead and lay the sod and they could tear it back out. But to finish out his contract, why, he was to lay sod.
I did tell John, and when I first talked to him about this, because that was my understanding, is that, and we're not talking sidewalks, we're talking the area, I believe, between the sidewalk and the curb,
Right,
correct?
between the sidewalk, they got a sidewalk there,
Right,
yes.
but you-
But it don't come clear out the curb.
No, I
It's the
understand
only
that, but-
place in downtown Leavenworth that we don't have a sidewalk clear out to the curb.
Yeah.
You put in a parking lot down the 200 block, and, you know, they don't have any of these draining pipes running up through the middle. They have cones down here for drainage, but they got a sidewalk clear out to the, they didn't mess up our sidewalk or our parking lot like that one down there is. It's a total mess. Everybody complains about it. All that rock in there, people walk across it, that's an accident waiting to happen. And, you know, one of the engineers said, well, people aren't supposed to walk on it. Well, they don't know the public, they'll walk where they wanna walk. And, but somebody will fall, that's for sure.
I'm gonna respond to you, John, but did you want to say anything before I respond? Just in terms of,
I think the dispute is over how
Yeah.
the project looks. You know, the
Can't hear
comment was
what you're
made
saying.
that there's no other sidewalks with grass. That's true. The city has moved toward an approach to control stormwater. This is a stormwater control feature, as are all the inlets in the parking lot. We hope to do more of this, to have more green space in the downtown, to get rid of the curb-to-curb, corner-to-corner concrete everywhere. So the landing pads that were requested, so people stepping out on the passenger side, although there is sod there now, well, you know, it looks nice. Those are under contract, so once our sidewalk contractor starts his work, there'll be, I believe they're 4 foot wide spots in the grass where people could step out on. But there is no plan to fill in all that grass between the curb line and the sidewalk with concrete. The entire purpose of a lot of these efforts in the downtown are to control stormwater.
and when I first talked to John, I did say, because that was my understanding, that there was gonna be concrete from yellow line to yellow line. But then I heard that there was going to be sod in there. I went back and talked to the city manager, and we talked about these landing areas, which I believe that when we were down there at that meeting, the assistant public works director said that I looked at, it looks like they're 5 feet.
3 foot piece, that's what you had measured there.
No, they're large, they're much larger.
I thought-
I'll have to double check whether they're 4 or 5, but they're not 3 feet.
But I have come down with my position being, I am in support of the landing areas, 4 feet or 5 feet. And I do believe that that's important from the standpoint of putting less concrete downtown, I think is important from the standpoint of trying to minimize to the best possible degree stormwater runoff. Plus the other thing, the more concrete you put downtown, the more that concrete, you know, absorbs that heat, and there is an awful lot of concrete downtown. And so in terms of trying to meet the consideration to passengers in the cars, I think it's a compromise. I know it's not what I told you initially, John, but there were some things that changed from when I first talked to you. But I do feel that the intent of having a place where people can step out and not step into a grassy area.
Why do we have it there in that parking lot and nobody else has it?
Because I think we're trying to do some innovative things and some best practices with respect to stormwater runoff, which has become pretty important within the city during the last couple of years.
I just can't understand why we can't have it so we can have a concrete for people. You embarrassed me to think when I told you we had people get out of cars in the back seat. You went up to Grimson's and asked them if you said that, and Mike come down and told me that, yeah, you did. You embarrassed me to think that you went over to Grimson and asked. You didn't believe me. That we
I didn't believe you what?
Our cars and they get out.
No,
Every day.
I believe you.
Every day, Tenpenny has, I would say 85% of military people come down from Fort Leavenworth for lunch, that there's 3 in a car at least, a lot of times 4 in a car. And come down there. We had Saturday, they had a function over at Tenpenny, and they had 2 people in wheelchairs, and they was going to get out on the passenger side. They parked in the handicap area, but then the guy gets out and tries to get the wheelchairs out of the back. He was backed in there, and he couldn't get the wheelchairs out because all the rock there, so then he had to pull out into the driveway, and because on the passenger or the driver's side, you couldn't get out anyhow, and that ain't a very safe thing. I mean, I know that they say that meets code, but I don't know whose code it is, the way it is, because always before, we had, probably maybe 2 feet, so if you was the passenger, or not, if you was the driver, what I meant to say, they would be able to get out without having to walk in the grass, where now they gotta walk in the grass. And the city manager told me that meets code. I don't know whose code that is, but, I mean, it just don't make sense.
But, yeah, definitely want to thank you for coming down and expressing.
I can't hear you.
I said, thank you for coming down and expressing your concern, and you said this is the approach that we're taking on down in the downtown area, correct? It's going to be.
We started a couple years ago doing parking lots, stormwater features, are going to be intimately involved in every new parking lot that we construct in downtown next year moving forward.
Okay, yes, sir, thank you.
Could I elaborate on what John was saying? It's pertaining to the
Yep.
My name's Kurt Guilford. I own the print shop. I own the property directly east of there. We'll all agree there were several flaws with the construction project. Is there any way that we could table this till the next meeting and look for some way to resolve several of the problems? There's a sidewalk on the east side that's got an 8-inch kind of a trip step. And when it was poured, there were issues with elevation. There are several problems with that project. And John's just hitting on the grass. One of the other ones is the mowing service, the contract downtown to mow that. I know nobody here wants to have the lawnmower run up 2 foot from their car and blow grass on it. I mean, if those guys are bagging it, that would be a good option. If it is what green space is downtown, should probably be bagged to, because you're just blowing it right into the parking lot and up against the cars. We're getting unhappy people coming in talking about it.
We hear
Mike and Beth at Gronis too, they weren't able to attend, but
I got you.
they were in support. Beth just had a knee transplant. Mike he mows lawns. He was out mowing tonight. But there are some ideas we have. I can bring you back photographs along with ideas. But the strip of grass is along the parking. You guys should check it out.
Yes, sir.
It is a problem. There's other spot there could be used as green space, and there still is green space in that area.
Yes, sir. And I'll reach out with our staff and get some information on that. And feel free to email me, and I'll reach out to our staff and get some inputs as well.
Well, and Paul, so as far as wrapping the project up, how far are we? Was there a final step to completing that, or is it done?
Well, that project's done.
Well, I mean, if you guys look at that, where the new sidewalk meets the brick, there's broken brick, there's a trip hazard there too, walking right onto the
So
sidewalk.
there's still a sidewalk project on the west side of your building.
Well, and that's what I was asking, if it was part of the same project or if that sidewalks are separate.
That's part of the same sidewalk contract of the 4-foot landing pads that were initially requested.
Well, and I just wonder if we could look at that all as one project.
Well, it is one.
Okay.
Those two.
in those strips, there were some white lines painted. I should have went out there and measured them, because they literally were about 3 feet.
I measured.
Is what they were 36, okay. I mean, 3 feet's not big when you pull your car up to it, but it's odd. So,
In the parking lot itself, or?
well, you're talking about in the green space along the street, off the curb. So, it's just another one of the issues with that project. But anyway, we'd like to look at it further, if we could table it and meet at the next meeting, have a follow-up and see if we can resolve something.
I'll reach out to the staff and get some information. Yes, sir. Hey, and feel free to email me.
Thank you
Yes, sir.
very much.
Thank you as well.
George Mace, 525 Cherokee. I've been a resident here for 11 years. I'm going to add to the subject that John was talking about, even though you've said you're going to check into it. And I've heard some of the comments that were made today. Some of them were about the water runoff. It's not working. The water doesn't run into those areas, so there's a problem with the drainage there. It wasn't graded right in the first place. The parking. It's the busiest parking lot in town, by far. Within the range of that parking lot, you've got 3 restaurants currently. You have 3 more on the horizon. 1 block in each direction. There's gonna be a total of I think 7 restaurants in that area by October. Is that correct?
You know as well as we do, yeah.
No,
Yeah.
between Sixth Street and 7th Street on Cherokee?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so traffic's gonna increase. As far as the parking goes for the handicap zones, John's right. Cars pull in there, they pull straight in there, and a van pulls in there, tries to unload the person out from the vehicle, because not everybody gets on the same side of the vehicle. And depending on the orientation of the parking space, it's not gonna have a landing spot for someone to come out. So they have to back out, back into the driving area, unload the vehicle, unload people, unload children, and then pull back forward. We have bleed over from Delaware, from all the businesses there. You see people coming down through the alleys and carrying their bags. We have the farmer's market, we have concerts, we have bars, we have car shows, VFW, Tenpenny, Crancers, dance studio, the churches. Everybody uses that parking lot. The landing zones are not unreasonable. In fact, the sod that's there right now is dead. You could go down there and observe that, and you could see people getting out of the backseat of the car too.
All right, we got you, sir. Yes, sir.
Checking to see.
So
I was
you're-
told that the handicap parking spots were the code. When was that code written? Because if someone can't get out of it, out of the vehicle, how can that code be correct? Does it need to be updated? And as far as the handicap zones, those green spaces, and opening those up, and you don't want to block off those green spaces, you've got a huge ramp on each end of Cherokee at 6th Street. Where's the accommodation in the parking spots? Is that in the plan?
So
I didn't
what we're
understand.
gonna end up doing, we're gonna collect this information, I'm gonna get with my staff, and we'll contact you and try to come up with some solutions. So so with the information that you provided, as well as everybody else, just give us some information to look into it.
The
We're not gonna be
handicap
able to make any
spots.
decisions today.
The handicap parking spots in the parking lot, handicapped people don't have room to exit the vehicle. Although we've accommodated handicap, yes.
You're talking
Would you
about
concur?
the ramp at 6th and Cherokee.
Right.
At every intersection,
Right.
the
there's-
raised,
Yes.
ADA compliant curbing.
And I was told that people aren't supposed to walk on the rocks down there. People do it all the time. It's human nature. I have videos of people walking across those rocks and falling. Happens weekly. I went outside the other day, helped a lady who fell down on the sidewalk coming out of that parking lot. So, this is an issue.
So the problem with the handicap parking spaces are that they're not wide enough for people who pull their vehicles in there and are able, and trying to discharge their disabled passengers? Is that what the problem is in your estimation?
That would be a generalization of the problem with it. The parking spot itself, if you orient your vehicle so that you're facing east, and you take the parking spaces on the east side of that parking lot,
Right.
the passenger is not driving the vehicle. The handicapped passenger, 9 times out of 10, is not driving the vehicle, so they're on the passenger side. That's grass, and there's a huge drop-off there as well.
Okay. I just wanted
Are
to get a
you
little.
talking street parking or in the parking
In
lot?
I said in the parking lot.
And it's not painted for van accessible?
No, there's a curb there, and there's crabgrass there. That reminds me, I think I said this already, all that sod that was paid for and put in there is dead. The crabgrass has grown up through the sod, it's well fertilized, because the first thing it did when they laid the sod was they threw fertilizer down there, they threw grass seed down there, and then they watered it and washed the grass seed down those eco drains, and then they put the sod on top of it. But they didn't kill the weeds properly. So what you have down there, it is green, it's quite pretty, but it's crabgrass.
Yep, but thank you though, sir. Were you done?
Yeah, one more thing. So the cost of maintaining that green space is not just cutting the grass, it's also washing the cars, because I believe someone told us that if the grass is blowing on the car, I think it was the city manager, that you could just take your car to the car wash. Well, people downtown don't want that.
Yeah, and so we talked about, he had brought up that issue about bagging and whoever cutting the grass. But let us reach back out to you. We got enough information, all right? We appreciate your time.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else? We're good? All right. Next item on the agenda, review 1021 South Second and 400 North 5th Street, properties on demolition list.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners. These two properties were on the list of properties that the commission approved for demolition back on May 14th of this year. These properties were originally given a 90-day extension and were reviewed again on August 13th, just a couple of weeks ago. Both of these were given a 2-week extension, so we're just back here to review them tonight. Well, actually, the first one was not given an extension. 1021 South 2nd Street. Gabe Cotter, who has purchased a couple of other demolition properties, and was at that meeting 2 weeks ago to speak about another property that he completed and had taken off the demolition list. He has this property under contract to purchase, and has actually started working on it. So he has requested an extension, to have this taken, to give an extension for him to have time to work on it. So this one, staff would recommend that this be given an extension until October 22nd, which is when some other properties were given an extension at our last meeting.
For the 60 days?
Yes, for the 60 days.
You
And
want to
then,
handle these separately? or
yeah, we'll take a
individually?
motion on each one separately.
The one at 1021 South 2nd Street, single-family house, just the bottom line on, is there a remediation agreement on that particular
There's
property?
not one that's been signed because
Right.
he's not the legal owner as of now. He's got it under contract. But this gentleman is the one, if you'll recall, was at the meeting 2 weeks ago. And he had mentioned that at that time that he was working on getting a couple of other properties, this being one of them. And the commission did tell him to come to staff if he got any of those properties and that we would bring it back to the commission to consider an
So we
extension.
still think he's pursuing that, and at some point here in the next, between now and the 22nd of October, we'll be able to consummate this contract? Or-
Well, Yeah, he's got it under contract. When we spoke with him last week, he was closing within 10 days, so I'd anticipate that he'd be closing at any time. And then he'll begin working on it as soon as he can. And he does have a track record of completing a
Okay.
couple of other of our demolition properties satisfactorily.
And that's 1021 South Second Street?
Correct.
Okay.
And he's done a little bit of work already. He's done
Yeah,
some
he's
things,
starting
right?
to get in there
Yeah.
and get some things done.
And then the other one,
But you want to?
Yeah, we'll do two separate motions if you
Yeah.
want to go ahead and take a
Okay.
motion on this.
all right.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we extend the property at 1021 South Second until, what we say, 22
October
October?
22nd.
October 22nd.
Second.
Motion has been seconded. Begin voting with Commissioner Dedeky.
Aye.
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 Motion carried 4-0.
Okay, then the second property, 400 North Fifth, at our last meeting on August 13th, a gentleman by the name of Mark Swope came to represent that property. It had originally been given a 90-day extension back in May. There had been no work done on it up until the point that we reviewed it 2 weeks ago. Mr. Swope, who came to speak about it, said that he had just recently become involved with the property and was requesting a chance to take it off the demolition list. So at that point, the commission instructed him to either sign the remediation agreement or present staff with proof that he had purchased the property within 14 days. On the 14th, so the following day, we did send him a copy of that remediation agreement, and as of now, we have not heard anything back from him.
I spoke with him earlier, and he stated that he had got something notarized by the wife, but he was waiting on the husband. I guess there were two owners.
I'm not sure, he
Yeah, I
never
know.
contacted our office.
So he never, oh, wow, okay.
I drove by this property approximately 2.5 hours ago. It's a mess. It's been a cancer in this neighborhood for many years. Taxes are unpaid. I think we as a commission need to take a leadership position, and we need to make this town more attractive for investors. They come into town, see something like this in certain areas of town, and I say, why would I want to invest my money here if I have nothing but junk? I invite anybody to drive around that property. Drive up Osage from 4th Street to 5th Street. There's a hole that two men could fall through in the, up on the second floor. The siding is coming off. This thing, it would cost, in my opinion, I'm not a builder, twice as much as the property's worth to fix it up. This needs to be immediately demolished. We've extended. We've had promises, nothing. Let's get the bulldozers running.
Well, I have a notary right here with the letter, but he didn't
But
send it to you.
he was instructed what to do. He said he's gonna do it, didn't happen.
That's the main.
And, I invite everybody to look at that property. It is another cancer in that neighborhood. And we have been dealing with it, we've had it on the list for over 9 months. I mean, we first notified it and nothing's happened. Only thing that has happened is that staircase has been taken down or fell off. That's it.
Well, I want to give it another week. That's my recommendation.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we immediately proceed with the demolition of the property at, what's the address here?
400 North Fifth.
400 North 5th. That's my motion.
I have a question. If Commissioner Preisinger's motion goes through, approximately how soon before action is taken on that house?
We would need to go through the process of disconnecting utilities, getting an environmental review done on it, so it would be probably minimum 6 weeks before.
The other question is, if we, again, follow on Commissioner Preisinger's recommendation or his motion, and he does, the party that's interested in it, does either get the signatures that he needs within a week, or purchases it, or whatever, takes ownership or possession of it, can we remove it?
Well, we could remove it. What we'd run into a little bit is what we've run into before, is there'd be costs, because if the commission direction, whether it's 3-1, 4-0, whatever it means, to proceed, staff start tomorrow with sewer caps, environmental review, so you'd start incurring costs.
Okay, I understand that.
Certainly until it was demolished,
But I'm talking, like what the mayor said, give them a week or two to do this.
regular meeting is September 10th.
Right, and I don't think anything is gonna happen to it within a week or two.
And you're willing, or you support giving them another week or so because he's talked to you and he's had trouble getting both the
Yeah, and so I don't know who
husband and
the,
wife together? Or?
yeah, so I got a notary with the wife's name, with the, right
Right,
here,
right.
but he didn't get the husband, but I don't know whose name is directly on the title. I don't know if it's a joint, if the joint names or,
The problem is we don't have any.
yeah, I know.
Yeah, and he didn't
Yeah,
even, he
yeah.
didn't even get back, I mean, even just to pick up the phone and say,
Right.
you know, I'm working on it, right?
So he didn't send you nothing?
No, we didn't receive any communication
Okay,
from him.
all right.
There's clear emails here, that we have an email string here in
Yeah, I
our
seen that,
packet
right.
Yeah, that's
showing
what
that's
got me on
instructed.
this particular one.
Yeah, but
What
I'm-
I'm concerned about, if we extend it a week, which is actually gonna be 2 weeks, then we're another 2 weeks, and I say start the process. If it comes in after we've started this process, and we've already done some sewer caps off, sewer capping or whatever, and he's gonna put the money in it, it's gonna cost him a little bit to pay us back for those things, if in fact he goes forward. But we have heard this story for 9 months, 10 months, from someone or another, and here's not even a legal owner, and I appreciate what the guy's trying to do, but he gave us his word. We've got emails back and forth, and nothing. So, and why would he contact one of the commissioners when it was very clear this was the process? So when he left that room 2 weeks ago, it was very clear. I just think we're being, you know,
I'll go ahead and second the motion.
All right, motion been seconded. Begin voting with Commissioner Dedeky.
No,
No.
Aye.
yeah.
So, no. Alternate motion.
I move that we grant the person involved an additional 2 weeks.
I second it.
That would make it September 10th, which would be a regular meeting.
Once again, my issue with it is, it's been going on for so long, and at no time has the owner ever come forward. The person we're dealing with, who we extend the time to, wasn't even the owner.
I know that, Mark.
And I
But
just think it's,
I'm in favor of giving people a second chance or.
well, I think
a
we've given them
chance.
10 chances, but,
Well, this is the
okay.
first time this gentleman has approached us.
Yeah.
I know he's a salesman, I know that he's had some medical problems in the past, but I think those are all taken care of now. But like Ms. Hurley said, you're looking at probably 6 weeks before it come down. So I think 2 weeks is more than sufficient time, and tell the man we got him a week, I don't care. At least give it one more week, but it's gonna be 2 weeks before we take action on it.
And during those 2 weeks, we would expect him to either sign the remediation agreement for the owner, right? The owners or owners to
Right,
sign,
whoever is the current owner of it.
or for proof of change in ownership. I mean, those are one of those two things that's gotta happen, right, in the
And
next 2
start
weeks.
working.
Yeah, yeah.
Am I correct on that?
Correct, and then so at that time, it would come back for you to review.
Sure.
And at that point, you would either recommend to demolish it, or give them an extension, or take it off the list, so.
I think I wanted to clarify one thing I heard. It'd be either the current owners would sign the remediation agreement, or if there was a change in ownership, I don't know that would trigger it coming off. You'd require the
Correct.
change in ownership
Correct.
plus the new owner
Yeah.
signing the
Whoever
remediation.
currently.
Good point, yeah, good point.
And if this gentleman who came in and spoke with us, if he signs something, does he have to have a power of attorney from?
I think that's exactly what, unless he is the current owner,
Yeah.
you'd have to
A
have
notary is just saying, yes, this is me that signed
Yeah,
this
I mean,
document. It's not a power of
It would
attorney.
depend on
so
what
there's
the
a
document
difference.
is, it would depend on how the property is titled, as to whether there's even a valid authorization for this person to act on behalf of the owner.
Right, but as the mayor said, and so I've got a notary here from, I think it's Mr. Swope, but, I mean, I can go to the city clerk and say, would you notarize this? And all they're notarizing is that I signed it. It's not a power of attorney. All it is saying, yes, it's Mark Preisinger signed this.
But like I
not-
said, I'm in
It's gonna
favor
depend on what
of,
the substance of the document
Yeah.
being notarized is.
yeah, I'd rather give it another week instead of the city wasting tax money.
So we're gonna the motion's for 2 weeks though, right?
Yeah, there's been a motion and a second
Yeah,
for 2
yeah,
weeks.
for the 2 weeks, so I second it. Begin voting with Commissioner Preisinger.
No.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carried, 3-1. Next item on the agenda, employee benefits plan renewal.
Our Human Resource Director, Lana Winter, will handle the next two items.
Mr. Mayor and Commissioners, presented this evening for your review and approval is the recommendation for employee benefit renewal for medical, dental, and vision for the 2020 policy year, which will begin effective December 1st of 2019 and go through November 30th of 2020. We currently have United Healthcare for both our medical and vision coverage. We switched last year and have had very favorable response from the employees on that switch in the vision coverage, and Delta Dental for our current dental coverage. We've been with United Healthcare since December 1st of 2005, and they have been very willing and able to make accommodations where they can in order for us to meet our budgeted numbers. Unfortunately, we've had another fairly not so great year with experience, but the original renewal came in with 14.5% with no plan design changes. We have budgeted 8%, and in doing so, we went and looked at plan design changes that could be made to meet that 8% budget renewal. We've met with employee council on a couple of different occasions, reviewed the different plan options and plan design changes, and ultimately, in order to get to that 8% renewal, it required a change to our out-of-pocket maximums across all three plan designs, and a change on our buy-up plan from a 90% coinsurance to an 80% coinsurance, meaning the employee's responsibility went from 10% to 20% for any applicable expenses after the deductible had been met. Employee council was all favorable, requested responses from employees, and did not receive any response as far as negative feedback for that. The dental and vision renewal both came in with a flat renewal, so no increase for either of those and no plan design changes for either of those as well. Other than that, again, the plan design would take effect December 1st, 2019 upon the renewal. The other condition in doing the cost share percentage breakout that we currently have in place, the employee share is based on the base plan. With that 8%, actually it came in at 8.1%. The city share increase was still an 8.25% because of the structure. And in order to get that down to 8 or a little under 8%, it did require the change in employee-only percentage going from 5% to a 6% contribution share.
Any questions or comments?
You're comfortable with all the changes and all the negotiations you've been
Yes.
through? And I know you didn't hear much from the employees, but the employee council did dig into this.
We met at least 3 different occasions, walked through several different plan design options. The big thing with the employee council, the copay stayed the same, our pharmacy benefits stayed the same as far as the copays for all of the prescriptions, and the deductible stayed the same across all 3 plans. So there was roughly, I believe, 28 out of our 275 employees that hit their out-of-pocket max over the last plan year. So you're looking at roughly about 10% of the population that's covered right now that is going to be impacted by the most significant change to the plan design.
So now, obviously, you have talked it over the employee council, and they're all on board with it, but if an employee who doesn't know anybody in the employee council or works nights or something, when they have a medical event in December after the new event, are they going to say, oh my gosh, what happened, or is it going to be?
That happens regularly
Oh, it
anyway,
does
so.
Okay.
But during open enrollment meetings, which we hold the first 2 weeks in October, United Healthcare is there, Delta Dental is
Okay.
there. We are also available, and we send out memos. Michelle and I are available for phone calls, emails, which we get on a regular basis as well.
Well,
So
I'm
all of the communication will come out in October again as well.
I know everybody fights with healthcare costs, and you'll be prepared for all the questions that you'll be getting. Thank you.
And with the proposed plan changes, the budgeted increase in healthcare rates will decrease by 0.23%. And that's not a great, but that, at least it has decreased as a result of the work that's been done over the last couple of months.
The city share does, yes.
I'm
There's no
comfortable
other-
with what's been presented.
If no other comments, I entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the employee benefit plan as presented.
Second.
Motion has been seconded. Begin voting with Commissioner Preisinger.
Aye.
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 Motion carried, 4-0. Next item on the agenda, revision to personnel policy manual.
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, presented for your review and approval this evening are changes to the personnel policy manual. The majority of these changes are housekeeping, and one of them comes as a result of the motion you just made as well. But the first section, Section 3, which is the employer and employee responsibilities, specifically Section 3-4, which is the safety policy. Currently, most of the safety guidelines are outlined under our leave policy because it does identify the work comp leave and how to report and how to code your timesheet. Most of the employees or supervisors, when they are looking for specifics on information, they look to the Section 3 for those specifics, and it is not clearly identified in there as far as the timeframes for reporting accidents, the policy form to use. So basically, we've copied some of the section from the leave over to this Section 3-4 so that it's more easily accessible for our supervisors. The second section, Section 5 in compensation, primarily came about as, number one, a change to the promotion pay increase due to the change in the structure of our comp plan study and the difference in the pay scales for some of the positions. The one change in that section was the maxing of the increase for promotions of 15%. There are certain administrative classes that only had 2 or 3 grades in between them that would allow for previously a 7.5% per grade. That has now increased to about 5 grades in between, so an administrative person going from the entry level to the top administrative could potentially have a 5-grade jump. This just limits that potential jumping of classes to the 15% or the minimum of the new pay scale, whichever they go to. The Section V-1 is basically just identifying the current process that's in place, just clarifying the commission-approved salary increase and the merit increases if applicable. And last but not least is Section 16-3, the health and dental insurance, which identifies the change to the employee portion of the single cost coverage of 5% to 6%, identifying city paying 94% of the monthly premium for the single base plan instead of the current 95.
Questions or comments?
Quick question, and something somewhat to do with this. On safety, workers' comp, what's our rating? What percent do we pay?
For
Like workers' comp,
the class codes?
first $8,000, you pay a certain percent from 0 up to maybe 1.9%. Do you know what our rating is, or how much we pay? I mean, Kansas Department of Labor sends it out every year.
Our class codes are different for each, so like our animal control is, I believe, .0254, our streets, so each division has a separate rating.
So it's not for the city as a
No,
whole? It's not for all 250 employees?
they're different for each class code rating.
Oh, okay, good enough, okay, thank you. So some of them are probably almost 0, and some of them may be as high as 2% for the first $8,000. Okay, thank you.
I had a question on paragraph G, and it talks about safety. It says the city manager shall appoint a safety coordinator for the city. Is that you?
Yes.
Okay. The safety committee shall meet on a monthly basis to review accidents involving personnel and equipment and make recommendations necessary to prevent such accidents from happening in the future. And then the last line of that particular paragraph, recommendations, will is crossed out, and we put the word in, may be reviewed by the city manager prior to implementation.
Based upon the nature of the recommendation, they are implemented based on supervisor or department head. So not all of them will go through the city manager if it's something that would involve cost or something. So the slight changes we have or recommendations that we have for painting posts so that it avoids someone backing into them. We make those and we implement them without going through the city manager.
On the more serious ones, though, the judgment
Those would go
be
through the
made,
city manager.
They would need to
That's
go
why
to
it
the city
says
manager.
may instead of will. So
Okay.
it does identify that, yes, the larger ones will go through.
Okay.
No other comments, I entertain a motion.
I'll go ahead and move that we approve the policy revisions to the city personnel policies and procedures manual as submitted and discussed by the Human Resources Director.
Second.
Motion has been seconded. Begin voting with Commissioner Dedeky.
Aye.
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 Motion carried 4-0.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you as well. Next item on the agenda, mayor's appointments. I move to appoint the following to the Leavenworth Main Street Program Board. I would like to reappoint Melissa Bauer to a term ending August 15, 2021, And I would like to appoint Kenneth Bateman to a term ending August 15, 2022. And I would also like to appoint Richard Gibson to an unexpired term ending April 15, 2020 to the Leavenworth Preservation Commission.
Second.
Motion has been seconded. Begin voting with Commissioner Preisinger.
Aye.
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 Motion carried 4-0. Next item on the agenda, Resolution B 2231, set public hearing, fire damage house, 228-230 Ottawa Street.
Public Works Director Mike McDonald, and I believe our Chief Building Inspector Halverdet is also here, and he may assist. But Mike, go ahead.
All right, thank you, sir. Mr. Mayor and Commission, this is related to a duplex that was damaged by fire. It was at 228-230 Ottawa Street. The fire damage portion of the structure has, in fact, there are building permits that have been issued for the repair. The reason for the hearing this evening is that there is an ordinance that allows, if property suffers damage 75% or greater of the insured value of the property, that the city receives up to a flat 15% of the insurance proceeds. For that city to receive those funds, it's necessary to have a public hearing to discuss that's the city's intent. And the purpose of this resolution is to set the date for that hearing. There is this particular section of the code's been expanded, and it used to be just fire, but I believe it's all causes now, tornadoes and earthquakes and such. And we typically have one or two of these fire damaged instances where we do receive an insurance check. Typically, at the conclusion of the project or the near conclusion of the project, if the city has obtained the check, city will recommend, or the property owner will request that those funds be released unto them, and that we have a process to go through to refund their money.
Mr. McDonald, Mr. Kramer, and maybe Mr. Waters, this is common practice throughout municipalities across the U.S., is it not, where
This serves as security essentially.
that we hold that in case we have to demolish the
In
house?
in case the city has to demolish it, it's security for your costs in doing it, and if repairs are made, then the funds would be returned to the owner to help that, but essentially it's security so that you don't have half-burned buildings down, and if the city needs to remediate the problem, then we go through the demo process, as you always would, but at least this way, in this circumstances, the city has the costs up front, at least some costs up front, to help handle that demolition, rather than having to charge the cost, maybe get assessments not paid. In this situation, you have some funds to be able to handle that.
And I've spoken with some bankers in cases that, let's say, $100,000 house, the city would hold $15,000 in an escrow, and they would have $85,000 from the insurance company, and they need to borrow $100,000 to rebuild their house. Banker takes that $15,000 knowing that it's good. I mean, they will take a flyer, not a flyer on a person, but they know that they have, $15,000 coming.
They know that because you would be statutorily required.
Right.
To make that payment.
So, I mean, we're not handcuffing any owners or anything by this. We're protecting ourselves or the city, citizens of the city, and it usually works out very well. I mean, it's a very common practice.
Yeah, I think to my knowledge, we've returned every one we've received.
Yeah.
So, I think of the other thing, if owners made a good faith and got 60 or 70% of it done, we've released the money prior.
Right.
Instead of
Yeah,
thinking
you establish
they don't
when
have
it
to
works
borrow.
for you.
Yeah.
When you're satisfied that you
Yeah.
can release those funds.
Because, no, it would cut down, if, I don't think we've ever had to use one yet, have we?
I don't believe so, sir.
But if we ever did, it would cut down on some of the things that we approved this evening.
Yeah.
$94,000.
Any other comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the resolution B 2231, set the public hearing for the fire damaged house 228-230 Ottawa for October 22nd as the date for the public hearing.
Second.
Motion has been seconded. Begin voting with Commissioner Dedekin.
Aye.
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 Motion carried 4-0. Next item on the agenda, consent agenda.
I will go ahead and move that we approve claims for August 10th, 2019 through August 23rd, 2019 in the amount of $974,652. Net amount for payroll number 17 effective August 16th, 2019 in the amount of $364,671.86. And this includes police and fire pension in the amount of $11,572.36.
Second.
Motion has been seconded. Begin voting with Commissioner Priceinger.
Aye.
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 Motion carried 4-0. Are there any discussions among the commissioners? Anything that you would like to address?
I don't have anything.
No, just First City Connection, the latest edition of the First City Connection is, well, we had it in a packet. I saw it out, our Public Information Officer, Melissa Bauer, I think, released it about a week ago on Facebook, if I'm not mistaken. And should they be mailed to residents and citizens soon? I haven't gotten mine yet, but they should be coming soon?
Yep.
Okay. So I just wanted to bring that to the attention of our citizens, that a lot of good information in here, particularly on Camp Leavenworth, which is our festival for the First City of Kansas on the 20th and 21st of September.
Commissioner Priceinger?
The only thing I have to say, the organization that's putting on Camp Leavenworth, not O'Neill and Whitaker, what's it?
O'Neill Events and Marketing.
O'Neill Events and Marketing. Saw them on TV. They're handling the Irish Fest this weekend in Kansas City. And they were being interviewed there on their process or what's going on specifically on security matters. Happened to be the TV interview. Nothing else.
Just a reminder to anybody watching is that even though next Tuesday falls directly after the holiday, we do have a meeting next week. So it'll be a study session September 3rd, regular time here in the City Commission chambers.
Yep. I have nothing. Motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is seconded. Begin voting with Commissioner Dedeky.
Aye.
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 Motion carried. Meeting adjourned.